Great. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Metaphysical Insights. My name is William Becker, and my guest today is the really fascinating Rick Hale. Um, Rick
Well,
is a Rick's a great guy. He's been in the paranormal for a long time. Well, he does his research. He's got books out. He's been on movies, documentaries, as well as he's got his own show. I mean, the list goes on and on. Welcome, Rick.
hey,
Well,
William,
thanks
thank
for
you for
being
having.
here.
Yes, thank you for having me on. I think this is my second time being on your
I
show,
think
I believe.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you've been on at least once before. I couldn't
Mhm.
remember how. So, if people have questions or want to check with something, um, go ahead and write in. I have this magic power. My friend Vivian Powell says I'm a wizard. Um, but I can
You you kind of have
click
like
on
a
things.
Gandalf vibe to you there. I think it's the beard and the hair.
Yeah, the long white hair and the white beard. Yeah, but I can click on them and have them show up. So it doesn't have to be a two-way conversation. You can all join in on us. Um, I think first of all,
Mhm.
what are your new projects? And you know me, my ADHD brain goes all over, and I probably don't have a good set logical order, but it'll come
Yeah,
together.
that's okay.
So
Yeah, the things that I'm working on right now, I just released a new book
okay,
called There's My Dog. I
yay,
just released a new book through Bayou Lathris. You are also one of
I'm one of those.
their second American author, called
Uh,
Ghostwatch, and it's actually
uh,
based on the segment that I do on my show that with Stephen Lancaster, the Shadow Initiative, Paranormal
uh,
Talk and TV, and so it's based on that, and still writing for SpookyIsles.com.
right.
Uh, just finished up a an article for them about the bull beggar, and kind of the boogeyman of Creech Hill, which is over in the United Kingdom. Just sent that away, just a matter of moments before I got on here with you.
Okay. Now, first of all, what is a web address where they can find your books and find your show and all the rest of it?
Well, I mean, the show can be found. We're literally everywhere. We are everywhere. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Apple. We're on Stitcher, I think it is. We are on Pandora. We are on YouTube. You can pretty much find us everywhere. It's the Shadow Initiative, Paranormal Talk and TV, with myself, Rick Hale, and my good friend, colleague, and general pain in the ass, Stephen Lancaster. And as for my books, currently I have four that are out. The first one being The Geek's Guide to the Strange and Unusual, Poltergeist, Ghosts, and Demons. The second one being Behold, Shocking True Tales of Terror and Some Other Spooky Stuff. Number three, Bullets, Booze, and Babes, The Haunted Criminal History of Illinois and Chicago. And the latest one being Ghostwatch. And they can all be found at Amazon.com.
Great. Okay. I've got those two out there. We can put them out again. I just like to make sure people know how to get. I read your articles that you post.
Thanks.
Um, I love the way you write. I mean, we've known each other for several years now.
Yes. Since the old Paranormal Underground radio days.
Yeah,
Really.
exactly. And you're a fabulous writer, and
Thank
I'm
you.
really glad that you've been able to continue along this vein. And I love the stories. I think it's particularly interesting that so many of what you write about in the articles are in the UK.
Yeah.
And I love it
Yeah.
when you write about a place I've actually been or stayed in.
Yeah. I've never actually been to the United Kingdom, but I know an awful lot about those places. And I get that question a lot. It was like, wow, you seem to know these places really, really intimately, like you've been there. And it's like, I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe I have been in a past life, but it's real easy. When I first got interested in all of this back in the early 1980s, I was 8 years old, so
Hmm.
it's like 1982. You couldn't just walk into a store or a library and find hundreds of books on the subject of the paranormal.
Right.
um, in the libraries, you were lucky if you could find two or three books. And I was real lucky. I had, my parents were divorced. That's not really that lucky. My parents were divorced. My mom lived in the northern suburbs of Illinois, and my dad lived in Chicago. So I had both of those library resources. And when I went to the library, I found, of course, books by Hans Holzer,
Hmm.
and Brad Steiger, who were, primarily American authors. But I really fell in love with the writings of like Peter Underwood and Elliot O'Donnell, um, and Guy Lyon Playfair. And of course, these were, British authors. So they wrote
Hmm.
primarily about, English places, especially the writing of Peter Underwood, who I, feel is a real inspiration, not only as a writer, but also as an investigator of psychic phenomena. And so it's I got this real love for British ghosts and British haunted places in Britain. So I really have researched those places extensively, and I write about
Hmm.
them for
Right.
spookyisles.com.
Now, did you have an interest in British history and such, even from an early age?
Yeah, actually I have. And it's a really interesting story why I do. And and I know that you'll understand this as being a psychic.
Hmm.
Um, from about the time I was a kid to about the time I was 17 or 18, I had this reoccurring dream. I was a World War I British soldier who died in battle.
Yep.
And when I
You were
told,
actually, by the way.
yeah, well, exactly. I told a psychic friend of mine about this, and well, let me go back. I have this extreme fear of water.
Okay.
It takes a lot to get me into a pool. Getting me into an ocean or a lake, forget about it. And the reason this is because in the dream, I was running. I can still like see this person running in this trench, and all of a sudden, there's this loud bang, and he just falls forward into a puddle of water. So it really wasn't the bullet that killed him, but it was drowning in this large puddle of water. And I told a psychic friend about this, and she's like, "Well, that is a dominant past life of yours. And this is probably why you have this fear of water, and why you probably have this great desire and love for British history, and because this past life wants to go home. So
Right.
hopefully one day I'll be able to take him home."
Yes. And you may have had others there too. I find that we're often called to the countries where we've had a past connection. I
Sure.
I know I stumble into it every once in a while.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Mhm.
And your friend was absolutely right. You started talking, and it's like, oh yeah, you were a British soldier in the First War. Could see you in uniform in the trenches. I mean, so um,
I can still see his face. I mean, he wore like, the round
mhm,
glasses, and he was very young, 17, 18 years old,
mhm,
absolutely terrified of what was going on around him,
yep,
shell shocked. And he was shot in the back and drowned in this big trench of water. So I mean, that's probably why I have such a love for British, for the history of the United Kingdom and Ireland.
yeah. Well, we've got to get you over there pretty fast.
Well, hopefully one day.
Yeah, I'm working on. Oh, well, I've been working all my life on being able to live over there part time. So
Oh, really?
yeah, I haven't figured it out yet.
Mhm.
There's this problem called income, but
Same here.
yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I've got lottery tickets. Um, so it takes me actually to another point. I've known you since before you wound up having to lose part of your leg. And
Yes,
I know that it was a rough time. We did a lot of talking through then.
we
I
did.
think,
You helped us out a lot, and I've always been very, very grateful for that.
oh, well, good. I'm glad. I appreciate that. And I'm glad it helped. But one of the things I always believed in was your writing ability, and you seem to keep doing and have become even more prolific now. Um, but and I don't want to intrude or pry or
Hmm,
put anything out there you don't want to talk about, but your perspective of life, but also your perspective of getting around, doing investigations,
mhm.
paranormal. I mean, just because of the medical issues and all the rest of it, I would imagine have changed quite a bit. And any of that you would like to talk about, I would like to give you the floor space to do so.
Sure, thank you. So in 2016, I was diagnosed with a rare form of soft tissue cancer called synovial cell sarcoma. Um, my I had a giant tumor growing on my left ankle that was actually invading into the bone. And when I went to the doctor was like, hey, glad you came in because you were stage 4 and you were probably only a couple of months away from being gone,
Oof.
dead.
Yeah.
So the doctor told me that the only way that we're going to be able to save your life is by amputating your left leg. So my left leg is amputated um, about 3 or 4 inches below the knee,
Mhm.
and it unfortunately it came back again in 2019, and it took part of my lung,
Mm.
um, my left lung. But one of the things that I really like to touch on with people that are disabled, there is a place for you in this.
Mhm.
You can do investigations. You can be a part of a group that goes into places and looks for um, things like ghosts and monsters and aliens.
Mhm.
If you're somebody who is disabled and say you are confined to a wheelchair, you can be that person that sits behind a monitor and watches the monitor, or listens to EVPs, or goes over video and photographs. If you are a person who is blind, chances are your hearing is enhanced. You would be perfect for listening for EVPs and sound recordings and stuff like that. If you are blind, I'm sorry, if you are deaf, your sight may be enhanced as well, and you'd be really good at looking at pictures and video, and taking things out and of that. And I really need people to understand that your disability is not who you are. And it's like, I don't even like using the term disability. You're just differently abled.
Right.
And you still have a place. You still have a part in all of this. And it's like, I would love to see more representation of people in like TV shows and documentaries of the paranormal who are disabled. And what's really great is I think you're starting to see a lot more um, diversity on these. You see
Mhm.
more LGBTQ
Yes.
people that are involved in television shows. I know you as a gay man, you are very much involved in this as both a psychic as well as an investigator. So it's
Right.
like, there is a place for the LGBTQ. There is a place for people of color. There is a place for the disabled, because this is something that involves every single person that has ever
Mhm.
lived. So people of color, gay, whatever, it doesn't matter. You have a place.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's good. We often don't hear people talk about inclusiveness and the need for it. And I don't have cable. I'm a frugal person, so if
Sure.
I have an indoor HD antenna, and I watch free stuff on YouTube and channel my public broadcasting
Mhm.
station, and that's about it. So there are a lot of the shows and such I don't get a chance to see. Um,
Well,
some I don't want to. Some of them I'd kind of like to. It's just hard to. So I haven't been aware of as much of the diversity coming into the shows as you're mentioning, and I'm glad it is.
there is. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I mean, for the longest time, it was, it was mostly seen as by, big burly dudes walking into, a building and yelling at something, that may or may not even be there.
right,
And it's like it became like a real um like a masculine kind of thing. And it's like I most of the investigators that I've ever worked with were women,
hmm
and they were some of the best investigators I've ever worked with,
right.
whether they were
I like
psychic or investigators.
and I like working with a mixed group of people,
Yeah, me too.
um, because everybody brings a talent, and our life affects us in different ways, and affects how we relate to the paranormal,
Mhm.
or the other normal, with depending on how you look at it, and
Sure.
the metaphysical, because um, we all have our own different unique life experiences,
Yeah.
and when you get a group of variety, then people, one, you trigger more things to happen, and I don't mean by yelling at something.
Mhm.
I treat these places and the entities in them with as much respect as I can. Um,
Yeah.
I'm the intruder, not them.
Right.
So, and most of the time we're dealing with, beings that were living humans at one point.
Correct.
Sometimes we're dealing with other entities, but that still doesn't mean they don't deserve respect. Some of them are nicer than the humans. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've learned, first off, I've been investigating claims of ghosts and hauntings since about 1991. I was
okay,
17 years old.
right.
I've never come across anything that I would look at and say, yep, that's a demon or that's an inhuman entity. I have, however, come across plenty of human spirits who, while in life, were really surly jerks,
Right.
and
Hmm.
they have retained or rather maintained that attitude even beyond death.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, it's like when you're going into these places, you want to, for me, I want to be as unintrusive as possible.
Right.
Kind of like a whole, Boy Scout kind of thing, leave no trace.
Right.
But that's kind of the way that I like to approach it. It's like I want to do an investigation with the mindset that this is not my house. This
Hmm.
they these entities still believe that this is their house, and they should be treated with respect. I mean, it would be like me. I'm sitting in my chair drinking a beer, watching a Cubs game, and all of a sudden, some big burly dudes come walking in and start telling us who you are, and it's like I'm just watching a Cubs game, man.
Yeah. Go
But
away. Leave me
that's kind of
alone.
how it is.
Yeah. And I agree. And I've talked to, I don't know, I've saw my first ghost when I was 8,
Mhm.
maybe 9, I think 8. It was
Same
another
here.
kid. It was, no big deal. It was another kid. Middle of the afternoon. Um, I've been actively working on mediumship psychic work for almost 50 years,
Hmm.
not quite. And I have never met or yet to meet anything I call demonic or pure evil. I've never
Yeah.
met anything I call angelic or pure good. I
Hmm.
have met a lot of other fae, whatever name you want to give them, elementals,
Sure.
non-human beings, but they're just beings that aren't in, aren't human.
Sure.
And um, I find that you usually can get along quite well with them with some respect. I mean, even the Pukwudgies like me and don't trick me.
Thankfully, I've never come across anything like that. But hey, if you can convince them to play nice, cool. I'm all for it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's more of a a psychic connection or something. But I've seen so many of these things with my own two eyes. I have to
Mhm.
see something to believe it. And when I've seen them clearly, with the physical eye, then it helps me know that no, this isn't my imagination, because I don't do hallucinogenics. I'm not knocking them for whatever. I'm just saying I don't take anything that would create, and I don't have any health conditions that would create a delusion or create some kind of an image that wasn't already there. A
Sure.
hallucination. I lost the word for a minute. I'm over 60. I'm entitled to lose words now and again.
I do it too.
Yeah. Well, I did it
I'm
at your age too.
48, so
But uh, and yeah, I don't like to bash anything on my show. And I
Mhm.
don't want to bash any of the shows, but it's interesting. It's good to see a transgression or a transition, not a transgression, and into something that's maybe a little bit more of a positive influence. And
Well, I think that it has been. I think like the positive influence that the television shows have done is
mhm,
that it has kind of opened people's eyes that these things do exist,
right,
and we do have the ability to capture at least some kind of evidence that these things exist, and so yeah, definitely. I mean, that's what the shows have done, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. And some of them, I mean, I like watching some of the in the back in the past, some of the silly ones, even because of the locations.
Sure.
Um, Even if I didn't necessarily believe all of the history, they gave me places I wanted to go and sit. Because what I like to do is I get bored with meters and stuff pretty fast. I
I'm not
want to sit
really a
there.
beer guy myself.
I want to sit there and have a conversation with whoever's there.
Hmm.
And then when I don't want to talk anymore, it's like, okay, I can go home now. But I like to read and see the history of the place as well. I like to watch everything play out before me or whatever is there that comes through. More like looking at a picture book or a book of movie reels or something like that, where
Okay.
you can watch the battle or you can watch the ball or you see the lady coming down the stairs or whatever it is.
Sure.
That's part of the mediumship piece. And um, just being open, I think it's part of the joy of it for me. And I can find places sometimes through these shows that I haven't heard of before that I think, oh, I want to go and see what I can pick up there. I want to
Yeah.
see what my experience is.
Right.
I don't need to prove it to anybody. Not what I'm trying to do with it. Um,
Well, see, I'm the same way, with like proving stuff. I remember years ago, back in the '90s, I was at a friend's wedding, and I
mhm,
had this cat come up to me. Guy, sorry, I don't want to like make people think I had like a cat coming up and talk to me. I had this guy come up and say to me, he's like, he was drunk, of course. He's like, I heard you're one of those Ghostbusters. Do you know that ghosts don't exist? I just looked at him and it said, you know what, dude, I didn't ask you, because it's like I don't care if a
right,
person believes, I don't care if a person disbelieves. When I do an investigation, I go in as neither a believer or an unbeliever. I am there because you wanted me there, because you wanted somebody other than yourself and say your family members to experience what it is that you're doing. So it's like I think that it's really important to go into these that's really real objectivity.
yes,
It's just getting rid of your preconceived notions and going into these places and trying to figure out what is going on. I don't call myself a scientist. I don't call myself an expert. I'm just a guy trying to figure things out.
right. And you've got quite a bit of experience and study, so you've got some tools that can help give you um, some ideas about what may or may not be. And
Sure.
sometimes they're a mix. I remember doing an investigation once, and we figured out that a wood burning stove in that place, probably was leaking carbon monoxide into the house
Hmm.
when it was used. Um, but that didn't mean there weren't actually ghosts in there too. I did see somebody hanging in the closet,
Hmm.
and I saw my first tree spirit then outside the tall, thin little stick figure almost coming out of a tree so I could see
Mhm.
her. And then she went back into it.
Yeah.
And, she was there out long enough that I could look full on at her and acknowledge her and see her and thank her for letting me see her. And I was with somebody else at the time, another investigator who also saw her. So
Yeah.
it wasn't my eyes, but the stove wasn't working, wasn't lit when we were there either. We weren't getting hallucinations from carbon monoxide.
Mhm.
Um, but that's one of the things you have to check on. What kind of
Yeah.
medications are people doing? What's the environment? Are you right where I live? Radon gas is an issue in
Yeah.
many places, and that can create hallucinations. I mean, there are all kinds of things.
And that's one of the things that Stephen Lancaster and I really try to do on the Shadow Initiative. I just kind of want to let people know it's not a family show by any means. um,
Okay.
it's like we do try to educate people, we do try to
Mhm.
entertain, but we can also get um, hang on. There's not a show that doesn't go by where Jamie, my wife, is like just shakes her head and she's like, I cannot believe you are this inappropriate. But it's all part of the entertainment issue of it. But we do
Right.
try to like educate people as well. And you
Mhm.
are right. There are certain extenuating circumstances that you will experience when you investigate a haunting. You can't always just go in a building and you're like, "Yep, that's a ghost." You have to figure out, is there something else going on? Carbon monoxide, low levels of carbon monoxide poisoning can make you hallucinate. It could
Right.
make you feel dread. It can make you feel sick. Same goes for high EMFs. They do
Right.
that as well. Um, Even low decibel sounds can make you think that you are seeing and hearing things that really aren't even there. So it's like
Right.
if you can go into a place and dismiss all that's actually what's going on and causing people to experience this, then you may have something paranormal that's going on. And
Right.
and that's one of the things that we really try and stress at the Shadow Initiative, or in my writings and stuff like that. I really try to stress that although I do believe in ghosts because I've seen them, I've
Right.
experienced them, I've interacted with them, there are other things that could cause people to believe that they are seeing or experiencing something.
Exactly. And sometimes physical health can do that.
Right.
Sometimes medications people take can do that. And I often will encourage, and again, I emphasize I have no credentials and no qualifications as a
Right.
physical or mental health specialist or as an attorney or lawyer
Mhm.
or legal expert or anything like that. I'll list my degrees and none of them are that. Um, but sometimes you can pick up enough that you can say, you might want to get a physical. You might want to get a checkup with your doctor
Right.
or
And
whatever.
and that's
And
the
you can
thing.
actually
And
help people.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a high school graduate.
Right.
I did not go to college, did not go, I graduated high school and, kicked the dust from my shoes and went and got a job.
Mhm.
But I do know enough that in investigations, I have seen people who I I suspected of having some kind of mental illness that was
Mhm.
causing them to see and experience things. I've been in homes where I thought that there might be abuse
Right.
going on. And
Mhm.
I've had to suggest to people, it's like, hey, you might want to get this dealt with if that's what's going on. Or if they have some kind of physical or psychological disorder. And it's like, I'm not a doctor. And I would never, my God, I would never pretend to be. Like I said, I'm just a dude
Right.
with a high school diploma. Um, but I also know enough that if I see something, I need to say something.
Yeah. And that my whole point was you don't I want to always make sure people know I'm not qualified to give this kind of advice, but that doesn't mean that we can't notice something. And as a medium, I often find, especially in places where the house is just disturbed and whatever, I find that I'm right when I start asking and finding out that, yeah, there's a lot of tension amongst people in the house. And
Yeah.
I've been in several locations where it was the tension, the energy between people that created not so much a poltergeist, maybe, but created the atmosphere that was so negative in feeling and uncomfortable because all of those emotions took a shape then and created activity that fit those emotions. And
Right.
usually taking the fights outside, keeping paranormal or anything really horrible off the, no scary movies off the TV, brightening up the house, opening up the window shades, letting the sunlight in, bringing in flowers, playing happier music. I don't mean Pollyanna, but shifting the mood,
Mhm.
and that negative energy feel has nothing to feed on anymore. And it either just fades away or goes away or it changes to represent the positive that's coming in.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, go ahead.
and I'm saying that's just one of the pieces that the people involved can help create their own metaphysical environment, not just a physical environment.
Yeah. A number of years ago, I dealt with over the phone, surprisingly enough, with what I felt was a legitimate poltergeist.
Okay.
And this woman had me, talk to this lady, and she had a paranormal group come into her home, and I know their name, and I'm not going to say their name because
Right.
I need that kind of grief. And
Right.
so they went into this home, and they told this woman she had a daughter. She was a young girl, probably about 11, 12 years old, and she was severely autistic,
Okay.
and she was nonverbal. And they told this woman that the activity that she was experiencing in her home was because her house was infested with demons and her daughter was possessed by the devil.
Oh no.
Now, saying this to this poor lady who had just gotten out of an abusive marriage, like like her husband, ex-husband was horribly abusive, a drunk, um she had just gotten out of this relationship. She's in her own home, barely has any money to her whatsoever. She's experiencing strange things moving and breezes blowing through her home and weird light shows and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. And then to be told that her daughter, who is severely autistic and disabled, is possessed by the devil, I was so angry, William.
I
I
bet.
was seeing red. I could not
Yeah.
believe. And then to add insult to injury, they told this woman that they could bring in an exorcist and charge her $3,000 to get rid of these demons and this devil out of her daughter. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? And I'm, sorry for saying that, but it's
That's
like
okay.
I was so flabbergasted is the only word that I could possibly think of to describe my feelings about this. So
Right.
I told the woman, I'm like, first off, don't even listen to them.
Right.
Your daughter is not possessed by the devil. You do not have demons in your house. What you are experiencing is you are experiencing recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis, more commonly known as a poltergeist. And I told her, I'm like, I think that you going through the stress, that you are the focus of this energy in the house.
Mhm.
And she felt horrible. She's like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm causing these kind of problems. And I'm like, look, it's not your fault. It's nothing you
No.
did. You are probably a person that has some kind of innate psychic and psychokinetic ability,
Mhm.
and it is manifesting itself through this activity in your home. And I told her, I'm like, just do me a favor. You can get, you know, you can get, free therapy through like a licensed clinical social worker, and you can, talk your problems out, learn how to properly deal with them. I'm like, it's up to you whether or not you want to tell this person how it is, or what's going on in your home. That's up to you, but at least you can
Right.
talk about your problems. And I'm not kidding you, William, within 2 weeks of her seeing someone and talking about her problems, the activity in the house was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And these people
So
wanted $3,000.
I just I sat at the dinner table shaking my head. And like I said, you've got to be effing kidding me. And unfortunately, that is a negative side effect of how this has become a trend and become
Yes.
popular through the television shows.
Right.
Or, through the likes of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And but this is the kind of stuff that you and I that we have to, go in, clean up the messes, properly educate people, and
Right.
try to help find a solution.
Exactly. And I find often for me, I'll go in and read a house or do it over the phone. I don't have to, it's nice to be there in person, but I remote.
Mhm.
Um, and describe see who's there, what it is, and you have a conversation, kind of mediate a boundaries or something with the people living in the place and the people existing there before.
Sure.
And you create, I've had several times where people say, get rid of whatever's in my house. And well, one, I don't do that, and two, I don't think that works. But
Mhm.
by the time I finish talking with them and the entities, they're happy to have them there because they understand what's going on. It's no
Right.
longer a fear because it's no longer unknown.
Right.
And the fear of
Exactly.
the unknown can affect all of us pretty severely. And
I've been very successful with teaching people how to live with what they have in their home
yeah.
because as soon as you're able to take away that fear,
Hmm.
and it's a fear of the unknown, and to fill it with some education and some words of wisdom, people finally come to a conclusion that it's like, hey, I can live with this.
Right. And actually even enjoy it sometimes.
Sure.
Um, you know, I like it when I hear parties in my living room
Mhm.
when there's nobody that physically here. Um,
Thankfully, there's nothing in our house.
uh I
Yeah.
just I don't, my house was built by my parents. It's in a subdivision. It was a field when I was a kid. There were
Mhm.
orchards close by, and I see things outside. I hear footsteps outside. It's inside. I don't know what it's all about. They don't, except for some that pass through or visit. They don't tell me much, and it's
Sure.
fine. They can come. They're not hurting anything. Why should I care?
Right.
Um, and on some of it, I've been able to debunk. I wrote a post last night about the radio, the stereo volume turning on.
Mhm.
I have a remote control that I can turn off the volume, but it won't turn off the stereo. So I often just turn it to zero and go to bed instead of wandering around and climbing over stuff to turn it off. And it went on last night.
Mhm.
And I haven't put this on Facebook yet. This is the earth breaking announcement. I think I figured it out. The stereo, when you turn it off and
Mhm.
turn it back on, even with the volume on zero, or you've turned it off and the volume's been higher, it goes to a setting of about 9 whenever it
Okay.
turns back on. And there was a flicker of power last night. I got up and the electric clocks had stopped. I mean, they were
Okay.
flashing. They'd stopped for a moment and came on.
Mhm.
And a friend had texted me about, she had had a flicker, that she lives about a mile away, and it was close to the same time the radio thing happened.
Mhm.
And I tested it today, and I think what happened last night is the radio turned off and then turned back on again.
Yeah.
So there go my magic ghosts having fun and enjoying NPR. But um, oh well. Um, and it could still be something else. But there's so often, uh, just because I do this for a living, even a partial living,
Mhm.
with the medium work, doesn't mean that everything is paranormal.
Right.
You always look for the always look for the normal. And
Always gotta look for that. Yeah.
yeah, and I tell people too that I don't expect you to believe things just because I tell you if you haven't experienced them.
Right.
I had to see it to believe it. Okay. I was open to believing, but um, pretty much everything that I talk about as being real in these fields, I've had physical sightings of that are more than just a quick flash.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
So have I. I mean, I think that one of the most dramatic ones that I've ever seen was at a house in Waukegan, Illinois, which
okay.
is a town, which is one of the larger cities here in northern Illinois, and it's not too far from the Wisconsin border. And I'm standing in the kitchen and I'm talking with the client's mother, and all of a sudden, like, this woman dressed in what I can only describe as like white nurse's uniform
Hmm.
suddenly appears in the
Oh,
hallway,
okay.
and I watch as she walks into this room in the hallway, and I grab another investigator, and I walk down there, and the only people in the room were the homeowner's daughter and her friend, and the family in the house, they were Armenian, so they had the olive colored skin and the dark hair. They had dark features,
Uh-huh.
and this girl's friend was black. And I walked in, and there was no tall woman dressed in black with blonde hair anywhere. This room was no bigger than a walk-in closet that they had turned into a bedroom for this
Hmm.
for this teenage girl. And I asked them, I'm like, did you see the tall blonde-haired woman walk into this room? And neither one of them had seen it. Now, I know what I saw,
Right.
and I will not have anybody else tell me, no, that's not what you saw. No, that's what I saw. But at the same time, it's like, when it comes to skeptics and that kind of thing, it's like, I'm fine with skeptics. It's like,
Hmm.
if they don't want to believe this, if they want to cast doubt on it, you know fine.
Hmm.
I don't care. Somebody once described a skeptic is just a believer that hasn't had um, a paranormal episode yet. Now, I'm not quite sure if that's true, but yeah, I mean, maybe it's just a person that they haven't experienced anything yet that would convince them that these things exist. But yeah, that was definitely one of the most dramatic um, ghost sightings I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. And I think there's a various degrees of skeptics. Skeptics that are open-minded. Um, in some ways, I'm a skeptic.
Mhm.
I don't trust everything as paranormal. I
Right.
need to I need to know, you know, I need some proof. But I open-minded, and others that who they really do hit them over the head with a two by four, so to speak, and they still don't believe. Is always interesting, and it's fine. It's totally up to them. It's their. I don't quite understand when you watch things fly off the wall and have voices in your ear at night that you
Yeah.
don't quite understand that, yes, there's something going on here. But
Yeah.
if they don't, that's fine. It's not my job to convince somebody.
No, it's like I said before. I really, well, I just wanted to kind of elaborate more on that. I believe the phenomena exists,
Right.
but I'm also not so open minded that I'm going to be like, oh yeah, I totally believe that story. I mean, that's because it's like you really do hear some really really far fetched things.
Hmm.
Um, but again, when it comes to skeptics, if you don't want to believe in something, dude, I just do not care. I really
Yeah.
don't.
And with some of these stories, I'm I'm hypercritical, actually, maybe in what I believe, as far as things that sound ridiculous, or even some things that don't.
Mhm.
You've got to really help convince me, and especially if it's somebody I don't know. I don't know their qualifications. I don't know their background. I don't know what their ability to jump to conclusions is or isn't. Um, I'm not going to say they're wrong, but I
Mhm.
need something more to say they're right. And with
Right.
people I've known that I trust, sometimes, I know they're not making something up. I know they're not lying to me, but are they misinterpreting something? That kind of thing. Until I've had my own
Right.
experience sometimes.
Right.
Bigfoot was that way.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
People, they think that they see a UFO. Well, it's not really. It wasn't actually a UFO. It was something atmospheric, or maybe it was a plane that you're not familiar with. People think that, oh, I saw a monster, a cryptid, and it's like, well, are you really familiar with the flora and fauna of where you saw this?
Right.
Humans do have a tendency to look for familiar patterns in the
Right.
unfamiliar.
Yes.
And and that does happen. I mean, there are misidentifications. There are um misunderstandings, whatever. It does happen, but when you can cut through all of that other stuff, and you know you when you can cut through all that other stuff and you're able to dismiss it, and you still have evidence that's left over, you may have evidence for a haunting,
Right.
and or a monster sighting, or a UFO sighting. My son and we had a UFO sighting over the summer.
Okay.
We were going to the library, and we look up, and there's this light that's sort of spinning around in the sky.
Hmm.
And I was the first to notice it, and I said to Theo, I'm like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's just an airplane. And then he looks at it a little bit more, and he's like, well, that's not an airplane. So, did I see a UFO? Well, I mean, by its very definition, unidentified flying object, yeah, I saw a UFO, but it could have been something else that was totally of this earth. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I like to think that maybe I did see something from beyond this world.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a couple funny UFO ones. Um, a couple years ago, with the Oregon Ghost Conference, it was COVID time, so it was mostly virtual, but we
Mhm.
did some ghost walks around the city,
Sure.
in Seaside. And Rocky was doing some talking, and then nobody was paying attention to him. People were looking up, and I looked up, and then somebody pointed to him. We thought we were being invaded from Mars. It was kind of like all the pods coming. There was this streak of all of these glowing objects, and they were kind of racing each other, and
Mhm.
different shapes and sizes, all kinds of stuff. Some people
Sure.
were really freaking out. And we put it together that, oh, this has got to be some kind of space junk after a while. Well, I found out we were still there and thinking about it. And I found out that, yes, an out of control first stage of one of the rocket companies was re entering and doing this. But it looked like a Mars invasion. I mean,
Yeah.
it was it was incredible. And the other time we were up at Niagara Falls on the top deck of a double-decker bus,
Mhm.
and I saw this long cigar-shaped thing with all these layers of flashing lights that didn't make any sense, just spinning around over the falls. And
Mhm.
nobody seemed excited, which was weird to me. But then as it turned and completed the turn, it was a Goodyear blimp. I was so disappointed.
That would be disappointing.
Yes. However, there was a time, it was late one night. A friend of mine and I were out at a just kind of a rec property my parents had,
Mhm.
and we saw a very large saucer close by that had many rows of lights, different
Mhm.
colors, and it did its movement things. It didn't make any noise, and then went down behind a hill. And we almost went to go see if we could find it, but by the time we got to the car, we thought, "Uh-oh, we might find it." And I hit the gas for home pretty fast. We were in high school.
Yeah.
Um, and we weren't drinking, we weren't smoking anything, we weren't doing anything to create hallucination. We'd just been out there. It's a place you can go and talk and stuff. Um, and so that one, yeah, I put it up because it was close enough. it wasn't just a pinpoint of light in the sky that who knows what it could be.
Hmm.
It was substantial in size and activity. And who knows? But I find out that the area we were in is actually pretty well known for Bigfoot and UFO type stuff. So I
Okay.
didn't know that
Yeah,
then.
I know that now. I know that area of the country is considered to be a window area, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of weird stuff that goes on. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, kind of not quite into the foothills of the Cascades. It's in
Hmm.
what's called the Malala corridor,
Okay.
along the Malala River, and
Okay.
yeah, so um, it's always fun, but we've got to be objective.
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but, yeah. Um, what kind of do you have coming up as far as any cases or any research projects?
Currently, right now, I'm not really investigating. I was part of a group for a couple of months, and
Hmm.
it just with everything else that I'm involved in with the writing and doing the show, doing that was just kind of too much at the time.
Right.
So
Hmm.
I bowed out. Something. Unfortunately, sometimes some things have to go.
Right.
Especially when it comes to spending time with your family.
Hmm.
And so I'm not really doing anything in investigatory wise at the moment. Hopefully one day I can get back out there and do that. But
Hmm.
I will be working on a new book project
Okay.
for Bale Aethris, and
Hmm.
I am going to be writing a children's book.
Oh, a
Yikes.
paranormal children's book, or
Yes, teaching children how to investigate ghosts and hauntings.
I love it. I
There's not
really
a lot
think
of those
that's
out there right
fantastic.
now.
No, and folks, um, those of you listening live and those of you who will listen after the fact, Rick is really an excellent writer. I
Thank you.
encourage you to check out his articles and his books. Um, and for I have a feeling adults as well as children will like this book when you're
I hope
done.
I hope so. It's like I said with the show that I do, it's not exactly a family friendly show, but I'm a dad. I have a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't really have too much of an interest in this, but you have a lot of children out there who do. I mean, I
Yeah.
was
See, you've
I
already got
was
sold.
oh
You've already
my
got sales.
oh thanks, Katie. Yeah, Katie is a huge supporter of mine. She reads everything that I write. She's totally awesome. So thank you
She's
for
a
that,
supporter
Katie.
of mine too, and a
Yeah,
good friend. Yeah, it's great.
yeah. So yeah, so that probably won't be coming out until next year sometime. But
Okay.
but apart from that, the only thing that really plugging away at right now is with the Shadow Initiative, Paranormal Talk and TV, and writing for spookyisles.com, paranormalstudy.com. Occasionally I will have something show up in Paranormal Underground magazine.
Hmm.
But that's pretty much it. I try to to keep myself busy with that kind of thing.
Hmm. Well, one of the things, and I've never looked at you at disabled. Um, you just seem to have so many abilities that keep working and coming, and it seems like with the changes that went through with you physically, it's given
Mhm.
you a chance now to delve more into this work, and particularly the writing and the research, and
Well, that was one of the
opened up
things.
opportunities.
Yeah, and it has. I really think that my writing has become so much better. One of those things I wanted to talk about earlier when we were talking about going through the cancer. Yeah, I had a lot of people ask me, you know, were you afraid of dying? Anybody that has gone through cancer does have that fear.
Right,
And anybody that says that they weren't afraid of dying is a liar,
right.
or they're trying to be a tough guy.
Yeah.
And I am neither of those
Hmm.
things. Yeah, there were times when I was afraid, but thankfully I had my history of working in this field and being in this community and having seen the things that I've seen and experienced the things that I've experienced, knowing that even if I die, um, a piece of me will still survive. Something
Right.
of Rick will go on. Um, so it's like, yeah, I'm really fortunate that, I've had the experience that I've had that gave me that, that kind of rock to hold on to. And it's I've been 3.5 years now cancer free.
Congratulations and
Thank you.
excellent.
Thank you.
I'm
And my
glad to hear
doctor,
that.
thank you. My doctor tells me with every year and every scan that goes by that comes back clear, that just means that the chances of it coming back are less.
Right.
So, I eat right, I work out every day. We'll try to work out every day and, to kind of keep that away. But yeah, so it's like, with any kind of disability or anything like that, it's, you have your place.
Yes.
So
Yeah. No, I'm glad. Um, that's beautifully said.
thank you.
Um, we're getting close to the end of the hour. Do you have anything that you want to make sure we get in before we close?
No, not exactly. Just, check out my books. You can find them at
Yep.
Amazon.com. The Geek's Guide to the Strange and Unusual, Poltergeist, Ghosts, and Demons. Behold, Shocking True Tales of Terror, and some other spooky stuff. And the third one, Bullets, Booze, and Babes, the Haunted History of Chicago and Illinois, and the latest one, Ghost Watch. You can read my articles at spookyisles.com as well as paranormalstudy.com. And you can hear my show, The Shadow Initiative, Paranormal Talk and TV, that I host with my good friend and colleague, Stephen Lancaster. You can hear us on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, pretty much anywhere you get your podcast fix. And you can see the video version of us on YouTube.
Perfect. And thank you to those of you who have watched today.
Thank you.
Spread the word. We will have the.
Well, thank you, Katie.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Yeah. Oh, good. You can see them.
I can. I
Uh,
just can't answer because I'm not logged in.
right. Um, but we'll have this out on social media. Might be tomorrow because of my schedule later today. By the time I get it downloaded, but feel free to share it with others. My tongue and my brain don't always coincide very well together,
I
so
feel you.
excuse. Hey, I mean, I was shocked I got my name out right to begin with. Half the shows I stumble over my own name, so um, a little bad humor here and there. But thank you all so much for being part of this. And
Thank you.
Rick Hale, thank you. And thanks to your family as well for being, they're part of what makes you you and helps all this to happen and work. So
Thanks,
you've
William. I'll
got
let him
some
know.
good people. Good.
You.
Uh, Take care, everybody.
Bye bye.